Getting ready to go live here. We're already on the Facebook and the YouTubes. When we hear this music, we know that it's getting ready to be time. And when we hear those tunes, we know it's time for My Loso Lifestyle with Mary Schepp. Mary, are you ready to catch us up on everything that happened last week and then launch into today?
Yeah, last week was a little bit more about my story and my journey. So, if you want to see more about why I'm here and what's going on and how I came on this path of low sodium and low sodium lifestyle and all that, because I have, the long story short is I have advanced cirrhosis of the liver and I have transverse myelitis. So the transverse myelitis isn't really a low sodium part, but it is part of my life. So it's something that I talk about and anybody can ask me questions about. I don't know as much about that because it's still fairly new to me. But the liver disease is, as everybody knows, has been, ongoing since, 2015, I believe.
Wow.
Hey, Dad. Hey, John. So this week, I wanted to talk about what's in our pantry. And I get asked that a lot. And there's a lot of brands that people don't realize have low sodium options. So if you're watching on Facebook Live or YouTube, you can see that I got some of them on the table. My husband actually was laughing at me today because I was literally bringing like half of my pantry and I forgot some. There's quite a few things that I wanted to bring today that I forgot and I was kind of complaining about it. And one is all of my DAX spices because I use a lot of DAX spices and a lot of Mrs. Dash. But between the fact that I brought coffee cake for the boys here at the station,
Yum.
and I got
Awesome.
pulled pork with my barbecue sauce that I made last night, which is on my page. If you want the recipes for that, that's on my page. So we'll be trying that later. Sorry you're not here and you don't get to be a part of it, but it is what it is. So we'll see how that goes. But I wanted to talk about some things. And before I go into what's in my pantry and different products that you can buy for living low sodium, taste buds. So there's some interesting facts about taste buds in your perspective of taste. So one of the things that I was reading and discovering was that a fun little tidbit, and this is completely unrelated, but I thought was fascinating.
Yeah.
Like cats can't taste sweetness. They can't taste sugar.
Really?
A lot of carnivores like hyenas, dolphins, sea lions, they've lost their ability to taste 4 of their essential ancestral 5 tastes. Because you have, for taste buds, you have salt, sweet, bitter, sour, and savoriness, or what the Japanese call umami.
Okay.
And a lot of carnivores have lost their ability to taste that. They have no reason to taste. It's food for life, and they just eat.
Huh.
So now there's different reasons why, because everybody tastes things differently. And I actually had to look up how to pronounce this word because I pronounce it wrong. The little taste buds, actually little bumps on your tongue. Papillae, I think is how you pronounce it. But everybody has different amounts, and there's an average. But some people have more, some people have less. And there's what they call a super taster or a sub taster. So it, depending on regions and genetics. So there was a thing that they did where it said that, where was it? People from malaria-infested parts of the world tend to carry a gene that makes them less sensitive to bitter compounds, specifically those that contain cyanide. Researchers speculate that cyanide ingested in low levels fights malaria parasites while leaving the host unscathed. So genetically, over the course of time and evolution, if you're from an area, like normally people have a sensitivity to bitterness because bitterness is in poison.
Okay. All
so like cyanide,
Gotcha.
Which is why if you taste bitter, poisonous creatures, poisonous plants,
You
they
spit it
taste,
out.
right,
Yeah.
they taste
Okay.
bitter.
Okay.
So it's a natural instinctual thing to say, I'm not going to eat this because it's bitter. Whereas someone who comes from a place that has malaria, if that is in fact true and that speculation is true, that's why some people have bitter palates and some people don't.
Huh.
So now this was, I don't know if this is true. I have not tried it. I don't recommend ingesting blue dye. But it said to find out if you are a super taster or a sub taster, if you put blue food coloring on your tongue, the blue dye doesn't stick to your taste buds, the papillae. So if your tongue doesn't get very blue, you're probably a super taster. The bluer your tongue gets means that you're a sub taster. So you're more of a bitter hot sauce kind of, you can, have the atomic hot wings kind of person.
Then I must be sub because
Right.
I eat the super hot
Right.
stuff.
And my husband and I are exact opposites. He's hot sauce and he likes bitter and sour and he'll eat. I can't stand any of that stuff.
Really?
It doesn't mean that I can't eat it. I've gotten more, especially now not eating salt. The hot stuff does add a flavor.
Yeah.
But just because I can tolerate more of it doesn't mean that I search it out. Where he will go through half a bottle of hot sauce.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm right
it's not
there
like
with
3
it.
drops of it. It's
You're
if
doing
the
this.
whole bottle's gone, you might as well buy it by the case.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's not been a good bowl of chili if I'm not crying by the end of it.
Right. So I just thought it's funny because when people talk about it, and this was a heated debate, and I'm going to skip around a little bit in my notes because we had talked about Hunt's ketchup. So ketchup is to me one of those things that it's like pizza. Everybody has an opinion on pizza. It doesn't necessarily mean one place is bad. It just means depending on your palate and how they make their sauce and how they make their dough, people either love it or hate it.
Well, I mean, and the pizza it's been like a long debate in our household.
Right.
Because unless my wife made it, I just didn't like it. But I grew up in Kansas City where there's no such thing as good pizza.
Okay.
You got, and they're really,
Right.
it's terrible there. Kansas City doesn't do pizza. They do barbecue.
Right.
And many places do barbecue well in Kansas City. But pizza's horrible. And I just grew up not liking pizza.
Right.
And now, we'll have it every now and then. But Alex says Supreme Pizza is best. Oh, Gary, hey, in Southeast Asian countries like Singapore, our level of spiciness is high. I would say so.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and he says barbecue chips, Lay's. We get them over here too. Oh, well, hey.
Lay's so yeah, Lay's.
And
we'll go into all that a little bit with the products that we have. But ketchup is one of those things where, not everybody likes ketchup. I get that. Some people are ketchup people. Some people aren't. But when you have ketchup, it's there's certain things that like peanut butter. You're either a Heinz ketchup or you're a Hunt's ketchup. Regardless of low sodium, you're one or the other typically. And there's a lot of other off brands, and there's mom and pop brands, and there's plenty of other regional brands. But nobody's going to argue that Hunt's and Heinz kind of corner the market. But
yeah.
That being said, they both have a no salt option, and they're both good. I like them both. The problem is Hunt's uses potassium chloride, and potassium chloride is, you're still substituting one thing for another. Sodium chloride, potassium chloride, we've talked about this on previous shows. And potassium chloride reacts to a lot of medications. And if you're on potassium sparing supplements, you have to be very careful. So if you're on a diet like low sodium, you do have to watch for all of these different potassium filled things, because most brands substitute that salty flavor with potassium chloride. I can taste it. I don't, it's a very metallic taste to me. And again, that goes back to the type of taste buds you have, because depending on what your palate is will determine whether you like it or not. So I put out a poll in a few of my groups that I'm in to say, do you use Hunt's? And of course, I thought naively, like I always do, that people would respond and say yes or no, that they use Hunt's. And I got 8 million different responses of, no, I don't use that. I don't like Hunt's. I don't like this, or I don't use that, or I use this brand, or I use that brand. I make my own. I was hoping to get
you just wanted to
50,000 likes so
or
that I can say, okay, this is worth us going to ConAgra Brands and saying there's enough people. I mean, we've got 20,000 plus members respectively between just 2 groups that we have of people on low sodium. And that's just the people that I've touched, not like the entire, obviously I'm not freaking Oprah. I don't have that kind of reach that says I can talk to 3 billion people because I turned the TV on. You know what I mean? Someone puts her on a show and you're going to have some serious reach.
Right.
So it was, just wanting to figure out if there was enough of a following to say, is this worth trying to go to Conagra Brands and say, we want to save this? Because they do represent a lot of different brands. So it's not necessarily going to hunts.com. It's ConagraBrands.com because they represent Rotel, Slim Jim, all sorts of different brands.
Well, if we can get folks to share and like this episode like crazy and maybe catch their attention and maybe even tag them on it, someone out there, tag Conagra Brands. Maybe they're on here. I haven't actually looked for them on Facebook, but let them know, hey, there's a lot of people that actually really like this stuff. Yeah, they have, they've got their Facebook pages and whatnot and so on. And of course their website, and you can go straight to their website and go down to contact us on ConagraBrands.com and send them a message and say, hey, now justifiably as a company, if there's only, a few hundred of us, we're not going to change the stars on that one. It's just the nature of the beast. We'll have to figure out a different way, figure out a different product. And yes, you can make your own ketchup. It's not that complicated. There's not a whole lot of ingredients in it. I've done it before. The other reason that, in addition to the fact that Hunt's doesn't use potassium chloride, and it is a different taste. So like, I'll let you taste this after the show. It doesn't taste like the ketchup that you're used to because it has no salt in it. I'm not making any representations that says that it tastes like a salted product because it doesn't. But for somebody like me who doesn't have a salted palate anymore, or someone like my husband who has a reduced salted palate, it tastes just fine. But without that potassium chloride, if I need to use a cup of that to make a barbecue sauce or some other, a salad dressing like French dressing, something like that, when you use a brand that has potassium chloride, you've now added a ton of that metallic flavor, and to me, it just ruins the recipe. So I can't use a brand that has potassium in it for a recipe. I could use it, like I have no problem eating it because I'm allowed to have the potassium now that I'm off all my medications. So I have no problem buying the Hunt's and it tastes good. It tastes just like normal ketchup if you're not sensitive to that potassium taste. Well, I know when I was doing the whole lard, I was doing all this lard, when I was doing the whole low carb thing, I think it was Heinz that we got the sugar free or whatever, and it was a low carb ketchup, and it worked fine. I didn't notice a taste difference between that and regular ketchup. I really didn't. And that's the thing. It's like I said, depending on your palate and what you have, will determine whether or not you actually notice a difference between these brands. And like I said, with a salted palate versus an unsalted palate. So, like with the potato chips and whatnot, my husband can notice because he still eats potato chips. Well, and I do too. So, and so I would imagine he would notice because you can tell when you get like the low salt, no salt chips, it pretty much tastes like you're putting a potato in your mouth. Right. And that's, to someone like you, to me, it tastes salted as hell because the only time that's like actual grains of salt hit my tongue is when I eat Lay's potato chips. Gotcha. Right. You know what I mean? Because I don't salt my food. I might actually still have a Himalayan pink salt grinder shaker thing in my house. I don't think I have any other salt in my house. So I don't really put it on anything. We've got all kinds of Morton's, and we've got popcorn salt. We've got Morton sea salt. We've got regular salt. We are very salty. Well, that's what's funny is so many people think I'm going to be offended because, someone's using salt or doing whatever. I don't care. I really don't care. Or when someone drinks, they're like, oh, I feel bad because I don't give a shit. I really don't. I live your life, do what you want. It's okay if I use a little salt. Right. I don't. You're a grown ass adult. Make your own decisions. and that's the thing. Yeah. Yes. Anything. And we talked about this last week because of my life and my lifestyle. As an adult, that you're compromising your immune system if you eat nothing but fats and sugars and salts and, you're down in alcohol all the time. Like you know what you're doing to your body. Yeah. And if you have a disease like I do that is a chronic illness and you choose to do that anyway, I mean, I hate to break it to you, but it's going to kill you.
It may not be tomorrow, but it's going to kill you a lot quicker than it's going to kill anybody else.
It's just kind of how that goes.
Right. But if you want to make that choice, you make that choice. You make that decision. And if it's an addiction situation where it's not necessarily a choice anymore, then maybe you better think about getting some help with that. But so taste buds aside, if you are actually looking to make your pantry a little bit less sodium, we're going to talk about some stuff that I personally use. So anybody that follows me knows that the majority of my recipes start with wine. And that shocks people because I don't drink.
Well, I mean, you don't have to drink to cook with wine.
Right. Now, obviously, if you have an addiction, having alcohol in your house is a bad idea. So you need to find a substitute. And the common misconception or myth is that when you cook with salt or with alcohol, that it cooks out. And that's not true. The boiling point of alcohol and the evaporation process of alcohol, yes, it does eventually all go away. But like the saganaki, the flaming cheese at Greek restaurants, it's just burning off the vapor. You need to let that burn for a significant amount of time to where the liquid is almost completely gone. And it's nothing but like a syrup. So when they light it on fire and give it to you and you feed it to your kids, you're feeding your kids bourbon or brandy or whatever they dump on it. I think it's ouzo in most Greek restaurants.
Have the kids be at a dinner. But yeah.
Now, granted, it's a shot. It's one shot, 1 ounce. It's not enough to get your kids drunk.
No.
But for somebody who has an alcohol, like a true alcohol addiction, that will be a trigger and it will set them off. So you have to be mindful of those things. And the same as if you cook with wine and make a wine sauce. I don't cook my wine sauce for 6 hours. So if I make a pot roast with a Cabernet, the majority of that 6 ounces of wine that I put in there is going to be gone. But when I do a quick sauce, it still has a trace amount of alcohol in it, which again, if you have that addiction problem, you need to stay clear. So they're all alternatives. For instance, I made my last couple batches of stuff I made because I have a lot of requests for people for a non-alcoholic substitute. And I will use chicken broth, vegetable broth, beef broth, depending on the recipe, with a shot of red wine vinegar and a shot of balsamic vinegar. And red wine vinegar you don't have to worry. Well, I'd have to double check that. There might actually be like a scant trace of alcohol left in that, kind of like a non-alcoholic beer. But you can forego it if you want. It's just that vinegar, and you up the balsamic. So instead of 1 tablespoon of each, you would do 2 tablespoons of balsamic. But it reduces down and it still gives you a flavor. It's not quite the same, but it's still good enough to where it substitute that salty flavor. So I did that last time.
Cool.
But I do, in my cabinet, the little tiny bottles, you can buy them in 4-packs, you can buy them individually. I always have white wine, usually Pinot Grigio. And you'll see on a lot of cooking shows, they talk about if you won't drink it, don't cook with it. And so many people are like, oh, you can use cooking wine. Have you looked at how much sodium's in cooking wine? Because it's a lot. And there is a trace amount of sodium in a lot of wines, but it's hard to find the nutritional information on stuff like that.
Yeah.
Because they're not required to necessarily list it unless it's got something that's an allergen. Yeah. And most don't. I don't think they make wine with nuts. They might, you never know. But
wine?
Right. No.
Oh.
No, nut wine. That's funny.
It would, well, I mean, like pecan or something like that might not be too bad.
It would be a very oily wine because nuts tend to have a lot of oil.
All right.
But so yeah, I do. I always have wine, red wine, white wine. My red wine go-to is usually a Cabernet Sauvignon. I just like the flavor in parts. It's got a depth of flavor that, like I have a mushroom that I make, and it's either Cabernet or Merlot that I use for it because the depth that it adds to it is really good. It's like a 12-hour process, but they're fantastic. You just marinate mushrooms and wine, dill, and garlic, and yeah, it's like a process. Well, I mean, the pulled pork that I made, and granted, I just had to throw it in the oven once the stuff was in it, but that still took 6 hours yesterday.
Holy cow.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And that's short for pulled pork. Most of them are like overnight or 15-hour. If you watch cooking competitions, they'll start it at like 2 o'clock in the morning to get before the judges.
Well, yeah, if you're gonna smoke it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's because I've smoked pork, and it takes a long time.
Right.
I mean, on average, it's at least an hour per pound plus 1 hour
Right.
to get it really nice and soft and where it just falls apart.
Right.
And, but even still, my wife's done pork. She does pork in a crock pot a lot for our dogs.
Right.
She cooks for our dogs, and that's still. She usually starts that early in the morning, and that's done around 6, 7 o'clock in the evening. And it's, I guess it is a long process.
See, I've strayed away from my crock pot.
Yeah.
Only because that one of those tastes, that umami taste that I get from the Maillard reaction, from roasting or searing foods. So that means I have to sear it and then put it in the crock pot to get, so it's like a different process. So I'm just better off using my Dutch oven or my cast iron and getting that flavor right off the bat. So the Dutch oven is essentially the same thing. The only difference is you have to have it in your oven.
Yeah.
Or a fire pit. Yeah. Or any kind of fire whatsoever. I've even put it on the grill. We literally just like put the Dutch oven on the grill because in the summertime I don't want to heat up my kitchen.
Well, yeah. Yeah,
so it's easier to just
doing that either.
Yeah, no. So it's easier to do that outside and just not have to worry about it.
Yeah, all right, I get that. So.
But yeah, the other one is, so a lot of my recipes I'll put just oil. So on the top of the recipe it just says like a tablespoon of oil, and by that I mean cooking oil. And that's the same as all other products, ketchup and pizza and whatever. Everybody has their opinion about oil, like diets. They are like fads. So everybody changes because right now coconut oil is healthy and it's going to save your life. I don't know if you knew that, but the internet said so.
Okay.
So you better check it out.
I might actually even have some at home. I don't know.
Probably. But, grapeseed oil was a thing for a while. Avocado oil was a thing for a while. Obviously, everybody knows olive oil and extra virgin olive oil. I personally keep grapeseed, olive oil, corn oil, and avocado oil because they all have different smoke points and they all have different flavors. So depending on what I am making will determine which oil I'm going to cook with. Because if you use an olive oil or an extra virgin olive oil, the power of that flavor in the olive, you wouldn't think that it would be overpowering. But it really is.
Well, olive oil has, I'm not really a fan of olive oil.
Right.
Like, we have that, and my wife will use that in some things, but it has a very distinct flavor to me.
Right.
And if I'm going to have something that's cooked in oil, I prefer it just to be straight vegetable oil, the Crisco stuff, or like the traditional peanut oil that people,
right.
deep fry in.
Right.
I just prefer those flavors. Now, olive oil when you're doing what the heck is that little hard bread, and then you put the cheese on it.
Oh, like crostinis and the French baguettes.
Yeah,
stuff
and
like
you
that.
put a little olive oil on that with a little bit of cheese. Now that I like. That I don't mind.
And that's the thing is again, because if you get a really good olive oil, my father-in-law he had a friend of his that would go home to Italy every year and visit, and he would come back and bring balsamic and oil from Italy, and it was amazing, hands down better than anything I've ever bought in my grocery stores. And there's a little shop here in Crystal Lake that has oils and stuff that are also fantastic. But not everybody's gonna, as much as you want everybody to go and support small businesses, not everybody's gonna make a special trip to a unique artisan store instead of buying something on the shelf.
No.
So.
And see, we'll go to like Angelo's,
right,
which is a small
right.
supermarket. But they bought. We live in Richmond. They bought the little supermarket that was there forever and ever and ever. So now we go there all the time anyway. But we used to go to the one in Johnsburg a lot, and I think Angelo's has a spot over here in McHenry as well.
I think they did. I'm not sure if they still do or not.
But see, we would go to the one in Johnsburg quite often. But now we go to the one in Richmond all the time. And so as far as small business goes, it's probably, usually, like bakeries,
right.
we'll go to. which are individual bakeries like Riverside or
Mhm.
McHenry, or the one up in Twin Lakes, Bodie's
Yeah.
bakery up there. And, so, and of course, Wanda's Bakery.
Yes.
Wanda's Bakery.
Out in Greenwood?
By the way, in Greenwood. Yeah.
She's got, her apple fritters are amazing.
I've
Not
never
low
had-
sodium. She can make them low sodium, but they are absolutely amazing.
I've never had her fritters.
Yeah, anytime I see her, I usually end up getting a fritter. She spoils me.
Gary says they're in Singapore, chili and spicy food is a daily intake for them. So, for me, well, not daily, not near like it used to be.
So,
But, a few times a week maybe.
Side note on hot sauce or chili or spicy stuff. And of course, I honestly don't remember the brand. I'd have to look when I got home because I was at a grocery store a couple months ago. And I always like to pick up a different hot sauce because my husband loves hot sauce. So I don't even care if it's got sodium in it or whatever. It's not for me, it's for him. I look for the thing that says that it's going to be the spiciest, burn your face off kind of crap because he loves it. He loves every bit of it.
That's
So
what you should.
I'm shopping in this, little itty bitty Hispanic, you'd classify her as like a proverbial TV Hispanic grandma. Like, she didn't, she might have spoke English. I don't know. We didn't really exchange any words. But I'm standing there staring at the hot sauce, and you can see her like not wanting to be rude, but just wanting to get about her day and her business and grab her stuff and go. And here my dumb ass is just blocking the whole aisle, my cart, not paying it, no situational awareness, just not paying it. So finally it clicks in my head. So I step back a little bit, and she reaches up and grabs this hot sauce and looks at me. She's like, is this. And you can see like the look on her face, like she's going, I know you're looking at this wall of hot sauce. You should decide. And I'm telling you, you need to buy this one. So I was like, all right. So I grabbed it, threw it in my cart, nodded and said thanks, and went on my way. And I got home, and of course, Ben's like, this is the shit. And it was gone. So when I went grocery shopping yesterday, and he says, pick up more of the Hispanic grandma hot sauce. Like, well, okay. Maybe she's a grandma, I don't know, but maybe she's not even Hispanic. I don't know. I'm totally stereotyping. But
HGH,
right.
It's a new hashtag.
Right.
Hashtag HGH. Hispanic grandma hot sauce.
Right. They've got a new brand in the making.
Yeah.
But it was just funny because I was like, okay. So then again, yesterday I'm at the store and I'm staring like, oh man, and I got the right one. But I must have stood there for 10 minutes like, man, I wish that little grandma would come back again and tell me what hot sauce this was. So if anybody's ever in an aisle that you don't know, whether it's an Asian aisle, a Hispanic, Mexican food, whatever, and you got a little Hispanic grandma that points out a product to you and you use this hot sauce or that salsa or that, whatever, pico, listen to him because holy crap, that was... Apparently, it was one of the best ones that he's tasted. So now, I know it's a habanero hot sauce. So
oh, well, there you go.
It's going to be a hot one. But he's become quite the connoisseur of hot sauces and it's true. Even though it's hot, you can taste flavor. There's a difference between a good flavored hot sauce that's hot and one that is just loaded with capsaicin to give you the heat.
Yeah, one that's just loaded to blow your head off.
No, it's no good.
Yeah, that's not good. It's
right.
fun.
There's an art to balancing that.
But you want the stuff with really good flavor. And that's why I enjoy hot sauces. Because some of them have remarkably good flavor. They really do.
And it's quite the talent to balance that out. It's not easy. So
yeah, no. So now you've got on here my staples, onions and garlic always.
Yes.
For now on what's in your pantry.
Yeah. And that's the thing there's certain things that I will always have. I always have onions and I always have garlic. There's a local farm by us called Garlic Underground. They sell, at least they used to sell their garlic over at the Crystal Lake Health Food Store. And I know there's plenty of other places. They are regulars at the Palatine Farmers Market. And I know not everybody lives in, Northern Illinois by us in the Chicago metropolitan area, but if you can go to farmers markets and get real food, real produce, real butcher meat, real anything that is, been plucked out of the garden or killed recently, there is a huge, huge difference in flavor. And I've had garlic and I've had fresh garlic, but I've never had garlic from a purveyor that actually cares as much about garlic as they do. And there's it's like wine. They're like, well, this garlic is for like if you're just going to eat it like a salad or raw. This is what you want. This one is spicy. It's hot as hell, and all garlic raw has got spice.
Oh yeah.
It's all got a heat to it. This one's super mild. This one's super pungent. This one's good for roasting. And sure enough, they know what they know. They are connoisseurs. So I have, I'm lucky enough that they give me garlic anytime they swing by my store. They pretty much drop me off a little bit of garlic. So it's fantastic that they spoil me. But I will tell you that it makes a significant difference. In the garlic that you can buy pre-chopped in oil in a jar, it's like an apple. Once you cut it, even though it's not rotting because it's in oil and it's been processed, the flavor is like, I could eat that. I could eat it. Once you eat and get used to real garlic, I can eat that by the spoonful. Like it just doesn't taste like anything to me at all.
Wow.
So I always have, and I use a ton of garlic. But both garlic and onions, people don't think, and the same with potatoes. You don't think of the difference of them. Sweet onions, Spanish onions, purple onions, scallions, shallots. Shallots are actually a lot stronger. People think they're mild, and if you get fresh ones, they're pretty potent. Same with garlic. You get different variants of garlic, and you're not going to get that at a grocery store.
Oh.
Grocery stores, you get elephant garlic, and that's it. And it's almost always bleached, and it's almost always from China. You really got to pay attention. So you get a chance to go to a farmer's market, and there are plenty, especially now, there's winter's farmer's markets.
Yeah, you don't want a dose of coronavirus.
Right. No.
From China.
Right? But that's the thing is you, until I started on this path, I would have never thought of all of these things. But there is, and the same with onions and garlic. I tend to keep a Spanish white and a yellow sweet at all times because they're used for different things. One's more mild. When you get into the summer seasons and you get the Vidalia onions from Vidalia, Georgia, those to me you can almost eat like apples. There's like no pungent sulfur taste at all. It's just.
Well, I know some people do eat those onions like that, and I've never done it. I can't.
And I'll bring you some because it depends on the onion.
Now, and some people say, "Oh no, they're sweet. They're good." I'm like, it's a friggin' onion. I just wrapping my head around going like this into an onion.
And that's the thing is you're thinking of the onion flavor, and that's where if I literally brought you an onion and it tasted like apple, you'd be like, okay, this isn't, now I get it. This doesn't taste like onion at all. It's not that sulfur, bitter, pungent where, you need it fine diced or cooked on whatever. There's totally different flavors across the across the species. So it does make a difference. But those two things are always in my pantry because they impart flavors. Unfortunately, there is a significant amount of people who are allergic to things in the Allen family. So garlic, onions, things like that, they have an allergy to them. They can't have them. I feel bad for them. I haven't found a substitute yet. So I don't know. Sorry. Some things just suck.
Yeah.
I have liver disease. That sucks. I found a way around it. Like some things you just have to, suck it up and live with it.
I guess if there's no substitute, then you're just not doing onions and garlic. That's just the way it goes.
It's just like salt. There's no good substitute for salt. The closest thing is potassium chloride because of the way the ions interact with the taste buds and the receptors in your mouth and your body and so on and so forth. But it still tastes different. It tastes metallic, and it's still substituting one bad for another. And it causes problems. So, but I do always have those things. And the same with the wines and the balsamics. I almost always have heavy cream, honey, horseradish, a few different kinds of mustards because mustards tend to be a little bit on the lower side. Even high salted mustards still tend to be on the lower side of the sodium spectrum, and you only need a little tiny bit to go a long way. Mustard is a very potent flavor.
Mustard is awesome, and it also is awesome because it's also like low carb, no fat. I mean, mustard is like one of the most perfect things. If you need something to punch flavor for
Right.
you,
and I have mustard powder in my spice cabinet. I add it to a ton of different foods. And the same thing, like if you can't find a low sodium mustard, you can get some mustard powder and add a little shot of balsamic vinegar or something to mix in with a salad dressing or something, and you avoid the salt. You still get that mustardy taste because a little bit goes a long way. And you can make your own mustard too. Now, I would be careful because the oils in mustard, if you decide to make or grind your own mustard, is really potent. So it will fill your kitchen and burn your eyes. So just be super careful.
Yeah.
But yeah, of course, we talked about ketchup. And, again, across all brands, you've got all these different things. And there are low sodium versions other than Heinz and Hunt's. And anytime you find low sodium products, you've got to watch and read the ingredients, not just look at the sodium level. Because if it still says no sodium, but it tastes salty, it's probably got potassium chloride, calcium chloride. Calcium chloride doesn't taste as, but it still has been used as a substitute. So you have to look at the ingredients because you might have an interaction with one of those things. So you got to still pay attention. Just because the thing says zero sodium doesn't mean, like zero sugar. Just because it says zero sugar doesn't mean they're hiding an alternative sugar in there somewhere. So you've got to read, gotta read it.
Now you also have noted here Pacific Foods broth, stocks, and soups. Is that what you got on the table?
Yes. So, and again, with the taste, everybody's got a different palate. Everybody prefers their brand. A lot of the brands of broths and stocks, even the store knockoff brands, which is usually some other brand just slapped with their label on it, have low sodium or no salt added options. And again, pay attention because if it's a low sodium or no sodium, you got to look at that ingredients list because it's very possible that if it's no sodium and it still tastes really good, it's got potassium chloride and it's going to be really high in that. It's not just a little bit. It is loaded with potassium chloride. The same as it's loaded with salt. Like it's almost an equal alternative. So if you're substituting a teaspoon of salt, you need a teaspoon. It's still going to be really high and it interacts with a lot of crap. I personally like Pacific Foods. I like the ingredients list. I like the what they put in their product. So it's my personal preference, and I like the flavor. So I'm okay with it. They have a bone broth that's like 90 milligrams, I think, or 85 milligrams versus like 700.
Oh, okay. Wow.
So yeah, I mean, if you look at broths and stocks on average for a single cup, which is a serving of soup.
Yeah, but no.
Not in the real world, but on paper.
Yeah, on paper.
It's anywhere from 400 or 500 on up of sodium, and that's assuming it's an all natural product that has natural ingredients. In Pacific Organic, it's pretty much just the sodium derived from because chicken, turkey, beef, it all, and then the vegetables like celery is pretty high naturally in sodium, not 500 milligrams high, but respectively or compared to what you would think it would be, it's actually a little higher. So if you have a whole bunch of celery in a stock or carrots, it's going to increase the natural sodium. But they have soups and stocks and broths, and they have a bunch of other products that I just personally prefer. So I usually keep both the stock, the bone broth, and a couple of the soups in my cabinet just because it's easier for me to kind of have a go-to. And they have full salt versions too, just like everybody else.
Cool.
I just like their product brand.
All right, cool. Hey, Phil, how you doing? Good to see you there.
Oh, so the Lay's, when it comes to snacking, snacks are tricky.
I would imagine for you especially.
They're getting better. They're getting way better. My go-to has always been, what do you call it? Chocolate covered almonds, because chocolate itself really doesn't have any sodium.
Okay.
Milk chocolate a lot of times has salt added to their products. So like candy bars and stuff like that, milk chocolate products have stuff added. But dark chocolate covered almonds are typically, especially if you get them not salted almonds, they're no sodium. Because the almonds have no sodium unless you salt them. So they're actually pretty good. And it's a great snack because the dark chocolate has antioxidants and very good health qualities for you.
I love dark chocolate. I really do.
Right, same. I absolutely love it. And then the almonds have, everybody knows, has a whole host of things that are good for you. And in their whole form, you get them in the right way. So that's a fantastic go-to snack is dark chocolate covered. All it's sweet, savory, the whole thing, crunchy, all in one thing. And it satisfies that need for a snack. But Lay's has, it's funny because as you see someone in our group discover Lay's potato chips has low salted versions,
Yeah.
like the world explodes.
Yeah.
It just posts, oh my God, if you guys didn't know, there's Lay's has low sodium barbecue potato chips. And it was a couple years ago that started coming out. And then they started adding other ones. So now they've got the regular ruffle chips. They got the flat potato chips. They've got I think a cheddar cheese, sour cream and cheddar cheese one. So it's not no salt, but compared to the 250 or 300 milligram for, 12 or 13 potato chips, it's down to 75. So even if you're going to gorge and eat a whole bag at 8 servings, I mean, that's a lot, but it's not going to kill you comparatively.
Yeah. So
because some of the brands, they get pretty high up there in salt.
well, I would imagine. I mean, I love chips and dip. There are chips and dip in my house right now.
Same.
And I am quite certain that the chips are fully salted.
Right. Well, that's one of my go-to brands used to be salt and vinegar. I love salt and vinegar chips. So now that I can't have salt, you can't really substitute salt and vinegar.
No.
But you can make vinegar chips, and those are really good. You can also use citric powder on your popcorn and your potato chips, and that's really tasty as well.
I remember you talking about that before.
Right.
It just seems so weird to me.
So the other thing that a lot of people snack on is pickles.
I don't mind a pickle now and then.
I love pickles. I've been trying to perfect my pickle recipe since day one. So my bread and butter pickles.
Yeah, you brought those in here.
I have down
Those
pat.
actually had, to me, it had like a coleslaw flavor.
Right.
I love coleslaw.
Right. Yeah.
And they were not overly sweet. It
No.
was more like a creamy smoothness, and it was good.
Yeah, and I spent a lot of time perfecting that recipe. So the bread and butter pickles, or the sweet pickles as it is, those are fairly easy to make low sodium because salt and sugar usually, if you quit having salt, you tend to crave sweet, and if you quit eating sweet, you tend to crave salt.
No, yeah.
You want sweet and salty snacks. That's just how it goes. So if you're,
I usually do both back to back.
Right,
Like
right,
if I have salty first, then I want something sweet.
Right.
If I have something sweet first, then I want something salty.
So it just, the bread and butter pickles, and again, same thing. People post online, holy crap, I found these pickles, they're fantastic. And they're bread and butter or sweet pickles because you can find those low sodium. Dill pickles is really hard.
Oh, really?
Because
See, that's what I usually eat. If
Right.
I'm going just for a pickle, I'm going for the dill.
and it's the process in which you make a dill pickle traditionally is a ceramic crock, and you put cucumbers or whatever vegetable you're pickling, and then salt, and then more cucumbers, and then salt and cucumbers and dill and cucumbers and salt and dill, and you just layer all of that, and then you cover it in vinegar. Well, vinegar and water. So the salting and leaching, it's like sauerkraut. Sauerkraut's the same thing. It's cabbage, salt, seasonings, and vinegar.
Yeah.
It's really hard to make that because if you make it without salt, it's essentially a vinegar pickle, which is good, but it's not. I'll bring some in. It's not a dill pickle.
It's not a dill.
But that's the thing is, so it's like we had pizza one time, or somebody ordered pizza, and I went to have a piece, and it was like a barbecue pizza. It wasn't bad, but when you're expecting to put pizza in your mouth,
that would catch you way off
Right.
guard.
Or there's a BLT pizza at I think Half Times or something, and they have like mayonnaise. It's like a BLT but on a pizza crust. It's fantastic. But when you're expecting pizza and you put that in your mouth, it's like
You're gonna be like, what?
that's good, but it's not.
Yeah.
And
The
it's the
brain
same with salt. I've never made any qualms about saying. And there's some things, obviously you've tasted my food.
Yeah.
There's some things that you can make that do taste salted that aren't.
Yeah.
But
Those little egg cup
oh, hey
things
Jim.
you brought.
Yeah, the little egg bites.
Yeah,
Yeah, those are really good.
Those were really good.
Yeah, and that's, speaking of course, Jim just reminded me that a lot of the way someone at work had asked me, how come should I make a chili? How come my stuff tasted? She's like, I'm not gonna lie, I had to salt the crap out of it afterwards, and it still didn't taste right because she seasoned it after, not during the cooking process.
Yeah.
So she's like, how come your stuff tastes fantastic?
Well, you probably cook it in.
Well, just because I don't salt it, but the process in which I cook it, so that like my chili, I sear the meat, and typically it's in cast iron or it's in a Dutch oven, and you sear it and you get all of that flavor, and then you can just throw everything else on top of it and put it in the oven or on the grill in the Dutch oven, just like you would a crock pot. You get the same method, but you get a whole lot more flavor. So she tried it again, and of course it worked. But that's, one of these days I'll do a whole show on cast iron just for Jim. But it doesn't mean that you can't get stuff that does taste salted. But pickles are one of those things where
it's just going to be a tough
it's going to be good. And I'm still working on that balance of dill versus vinegar, because either it's too dill, like the dill loaf you guys had.
Oh yeah, on the
Right.
on What's in Your Loaf on that show.
Right.
Yeah, and that the thing is, it was good.
It was just
but
really
it was
good.
weird
Yeah.
because your brain was telling you this should not be bread.
Right.
It wasn't bad at all, but it just was. It was a real brain scramble. It was just not.
And people, and it's not outside of pickles, at least in our region, people aren't accustomed to eating dill.
No, you don't really get it in anything.
Right. And I've learned, and it's funny because that's what we're going to talk about next, is the different spices in my cabinet. I've learned to start cooking and trying those different things and researching different spices. So like the herbes de Provence that I post a lot, everybody always, every time I post a recipe with herbes de Provence, what is that? It's like an Italian herb blend, only it's from the Provence region of France. So each, like curry powders, Italian seasonings, they all kind of have their own little whatever blend.
Okay.
And usually you have your standard basic kind of things. So it has, like an Italian seasonings have the basil and the thyme and whatever. And then depending on whose family is making it, you might have something else that's kind of thrown in there. Whereas this a lot of times has like a lavender.
Yeah.
It's a very floral type flavor. And I love the flavor that it imparts in my food. But it's not for everybody, same as anything else. Some people just don't like it. Some people do. Some people like Italian blends over Greek blends. Greek tends to have more like mints and stuff in it.
Okay.
And I use that depending, because like the Dax Super Greek versus their green zest, I will use a lot. But depending on what I feel like, I will literally just smell the blend. And if it smells good to me that day, that's what I use.
And you really like Dax, right?
I do. And I have, everybody starts typically with Mrs. Dash, because that's what the hospitals tell you. Dash diet, Mrs. Dash spices, they give you little Mrs. Dash spice packets. And it's nothing against Mrs. Dash, but the Dax spice blends, I don't know what they do, but they have found this magic little blend. They're Dax Original Red. They're really good. They're in it. I'm slowly making my way through all of them. And it's funny because it's the one thing I forgot to bring. The whole bottom shelf of, if you open up the event on Facebook and look and actually expand the picture, like the whole bottom row of my spice cupboard is like 17 different spices that are all from Dax season one.
Dax. Well,
right.
We got them on the screen behind you there. So if you guys are interested, you can go to daxspices.com.
Yeah, they are fantastic. It's a family-owned company, but that I've become really addicted to them. My husband actually uses the Original Red just to put on food, not because a lot of times seasoning blends it's meant to cook with. Not just like a garlic salt or a salt or pepper put on your food, and he'll actually put the Dax Original Red just about on anything. Mrs. Dash, I do, the one that I really only use anymore for Mrs. Dash is Fiesta Lime. It's got like an acidic, almost like a taco-y flavor, I guess.
What do you put that in?
A lot of stuff. It's
Lime?
this, yeah, well, the citric component, that acid is what swaps out that salt flavor. And a lot of the Dax blends have that kind of citric component to help combat not having salt. So, and I've learned how to use actual citric powder. That it's just essentially acid powder. But you have to use a little itty bitty tiny bit because it goes a long way and it's very potent. So I don't use it a lot, only because it's easy to completely overpower a dish by putting too much in it. But that a lot of people say, you know, if you have a spice like hot sauce, if you can tolerate hot, it helps combat not having salt. It's because most hot sauces are vinegar and acid and lime juice inherently in with the peppers. So when you have that acid component, it helps bring a flavor or that tang to your mouth that you're looking for, that like the punch in the face of flavor that versus just having a plain potato. You add salt to a potato or something citric, like that citric acid or the Fiesta Lime that has that kind of punch to it. It brings that flavor that you're missing, so you're not looking for the salt. And a lot of the Dax blends has that, and that Mrs. Dash Fiesta Lime has that I like. So that's the only one of their brand that I really have found that I like. So I've kind of, other than that one, I've switched exclusively to most of my stuff I use. Either it's straight up spices like you would normally have, paprika, onion powder, garlic powder, basil, bay leaves, you know, your standard pantry that, and depending on what region, obviously, you know, we got some people from Singapore and stuff like that. Their pantry is going to look different than my pantry.
Sure.
Because, you know,
they're in Singapore.
They might have sardines. I'm never going to have sardines in my house. It's just, no.
My dad used to eat those all the time.
Yeah, no,
especially the ones packed in mustard.
Yeah,
They smell horrible. I remember that.
My husband might. He's not a real fish guy, but
I've never eaten one. It just looks gross.
It's a whole fish.
Yeah.
Bones and all.
Chuck it in your mouth.
No.
Go.
I think my issue would probably be more textural than anything, because I can do fish, but it's funny because a lot of people are like, oh, you don't like, it's not that I don't like fish. And even though it was probably, you know, poison to the nines and gave me a brain tumor at some time in my life, because my fish that I used to eat was out of McCollum Lake.
Oh.
So, right. It's probably why I'm warped. But when you've had, and I've had fish out of Lake Michigan and whatever, when you've had fresh caught, scaled, filleted, and then on the fire within minutes, it's way different than something that's been frozen and thawed. And so, yeah, it just isn't the same. So I just don't eat. I'm not a fish person. I just can't do it.
I don't mind fish so long as it doesn't taste like fish.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. The milder fish. But a new addition to my pantry that was introduced to me by a friend of mine, Nicole. And I know this is funny, but people actually have made special trips to my store to gift me spices. Cool. Because they have these low sodium spices. So she gifted me a spice called Munchie Man's Munchie Magic, and it's an all-purpose seasoning, and it is, you know, munchiemans.com. Oh, and I spelled it wrong on my thing.
Oh, did you? Here, I'll get it up on there.
Yeah.
I'll pull it over here, and then
it's spelled right on the top under spices there where it says Munchie Man's. It's just munchiemans.com.
Munchiemans.com.
Yeah.
Okay.
On the bottom, I forgot to add an E. But it was really good. He's a chef out of New York. So I made her just a throw together kind of dish that now I call Nicole's Munchies. I'm actually going to drop her off some here after the show. But it was a throw together potatoes, shredded chicken, onions, garlic with some of the Munchie Man's Magic. And it was fantastic. It's like a poor man in a bowl, but it's almost gone. I put some fresh pico de gallo, which I made with Dax. Literally one whole beefsteak tomato sliced up, diced up, like a quarter of a yellow sweet onion, 1 garlic clove grated, and then the Dax. I think I did the green zest, or maybe it was the super Greek. I think I did the super Greek, and then red wine vinegar, and it's fantastic. And it's just like a quick pico. And if you have jalapenos or something, it just happened to be, I always have that in my pantry, so I can throw one together in about 2 seconds. But I really do. I like that. The only other one that is new to my pantry is citric powder. And like I said, don't ruin a whole dish with it. Experiment with it before you use it. I started using it because I put it on if I make homemade potato chips or popcorn or something like that, or French fries. It gives that acidic punch, kind of like you would get from actually having salt hit your tongue. So yeah, but there's a ton. The other one that you want to be careful of is when you get a blend of any kind, they add salt to them a lot. So chili powder is a popular one. So if you get chili powder, flip it over, look at the back. They do have nutritional specs, but look at the ingredients, because I can guarantee you it's probably got salt in it. There are ones that don't, but a lot of them have salt. So whenever you have a blend, a curry powder blend, a chili powder blend, you got to be careful, because a lot of those have hidden salts in them that you would never think of. The other tricky one is baking. So we only got a couple minutes here.
Oh, we got about 4 minutes.
Oh yeah, we got plenty of time. So baking is a hard one because of baking powder and baking soda. So, and I put it in here because the last time we talked about baking powder and baking soda, I couldn't remember the difference between the two. Baking soda is used in recipes that also include an acidic ingredient such as cream of tartar, sour cream, buttermilk, or citrus juices. Conversely, baking powder is typically used when the recipe doesn't feature an acidic ingredient, as baking powder usually already has it in there. So baking powder is usually baking soda and cream of tartar combined to make baking powder.
Okay.
Both of them are inherently high in sodium because they are sodium bicarbonate. They're made of sodium.
Wow.
So there's 2 brands, and there's way more brands out there. You can find other brands. The ones that I personally like, I like the Rumford reduced sodium baking powder. It's aluminum free, and it's about 35 milligrams for 1/8 of a teaspoon.
1/8 of a teaspoon?
Right. And again, with serving sizes, you typically don't cook with 1/8 of a teaspoon.
No,
so the cake that I made you,
measures that way.
right? And you can get it, but
well, I mean, okay. To be fair, I know we have tons and tons of different measuring spoonage things.
You know that the devices are in your home.
Yeah, I know they're there because I've seen them.
Right.
I'm not really the one that uses them. My wife does. So we might actually have 1/8 of a teaspoon or whatever, a little scoopy thing. Yeah. So okay.
But
still,
even though you have it, usually the 1/8 is reserved for things like chipotle powder, cayenne pepper, things that you need to add a scant amount because
it's going to blow your head off.
Right.
Yeah.
Cayenne pepper goes a long way, so you need just a little bit of sprinkle. And not that chipotle powder is exceptionally hot, but it's got a very strong flavor. It will overpower an entire dish. So, but when it comes to baking, usually you're looking at like a teaspoon or 2 teaspoons or a tablespoon of a baking soda or baking powder. So if you take a regular baking soda, which is typically about 150 milligrams for 1/8 of a teaspoon, you're running into, thousands. It's like 1,600 milligrams, something like that, or 1,200 milligrams of sodium. So the same with baking powder at 50 to 65 milligrams versus the 35 milligrams. You run into these high amounts. I think it's probably because we went over an hour on Facebook.
Well, yeah, but Facebook gets cranky anyway. Sometimes.
Yeah, but we stopped on Facebook Live, but we're still on the radio.
Yeah, we're still on the radio.
The baking soda and the baking powder. So I use, I haven't seen it in any of the stores around me. Enter-G baking soda. Same as their website is www.ener-g.com. They have a 0 sodium baking powder and a 0 sodium baking soda. I believe they're mostly made of like calcium carbonate, but you can use them. I use them in the coffee cake recipe that I posted on my Facebook page, the cake that I bought for you today that you said was fantastic.
It was really good.
But the Rumford, you can usually get the Rumford reduced sodium baking powder in most stores. I get it at Walmart, I see it at Jewel. So you can find that pretty regularly without having to worry about it.
All right. Well, we're coming up on just 10, 15 seconds here. Anything you want to leave them with?
Check out my Facebook page. Obviously, download the 216 The Net app so you can listen to the station anytime. And we will post some of these websites, the products that I use on my Facebook page. And feel free to shoot us questions anytime you want. Check us out on YouTube as well, both 216thenet.com and My Loso Lifestyle.
Awesome.
Do, 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 do.